Hi everyone, this is Matthew. So last time we talked about how with the pitch, you really don't need to make it overly complicated as long as you're engaged, enthusiastic, bringing people to your table, asking everybody you see to come to your table. Your pitch is going to be pretty solid if it's just very simple, like, welcome, I got a great tasting today. Second, that when you are describing selling points, that one of the most important things for customers is the tasting notes, and that you want to really set the picture up so that the customer is actually vividly experiencing those tasting notes as they're actually tasting the bottle and tasting the wine. And third, how you really want to make sure at the end of the day, you always get customers' participation, whether it is what their favorite bottle is, or why they like a particular wine, or whether or not they hated a particular wine, or just simply feel free to take a bottle off my table. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the general rules of thumb when it comes to effective wine selling. And the theme that's going to go through this entire video is it really depends on your palate. So, rule of thumb one: stronger flavors will overwhelm weaker flavors. So, in your wine order, you want to set it up so that stronger flavors at the end, weaker flavors are at the beginning. And so, your normal setup should go from Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, Rosé, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Merlot, Cabernet, Zinfandel, and dessert. If you follow that setup, you should be really good in your order of how you set up your wines for your tasting. But let's bring back the theme. It depends on your palate. If you taste your wine before you start selling it and you say, oh, this cab is actually much lighter than the Merlot, which does happen, then you actually may want to put the cab first and the Merlot second. If you taste your wine and you say, oh, this rosé is much stronger than the Chardonnay, you might want to put the Chardonnay first and the rosé second. I may have given you the order of Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, rosé, Chardonnay, and then Pinot Noir, but it's permeable based on whatever your palate decides when you actually taste the wine. In general, then you just need the lighter, more subtler flavors first and the heavier stuff second. Second rule of thumb: ice. This is the trickiest one because you got to monitor the taste of your wine throughout the process and the temperature of your wine throughout the process of selling. Because if the wine gets too cold, then you're actually going to lose sales and lose customers because you're going to lose the minor tasting notes that the wine has. Cold always destroys subtle tasting notes, and warm always brings the complexity of the wine or the alcohol up and out into the customer's taste buds. So you want to monitor this. It's not a simple case of let's put Pinot Grigio, Chardonnay, and Rosé all in an ice bucket and get them really chilled. Because not every wine is best that way, and not every wine should be served that way. I would say that you can actually taste, and if a wine is fairly acidic or citric based, then that's a flavor that often comes out well in the cold. So those citrus based, acidic based wines often do better when they're more chilled than not. If a wine is less that and more peach, pear, apple kind of based, they do better on the warmer side as a general rule of thumb. But it's all in your taste buds. And I hate to put that sort of onus on your shoulders, but it's really what you're tasting. One of the ways that I've come up with to solve this is, as a general rule of thumb, I will always make my Chardonnays on the warm side and more room temperature, and I will always serve my Pinot Grigios and Rosés on the colder side, on the more soda, even Sauvignon Blanc, on the more refreshing colder side versus warmer side. Again, it's up to you, and it's all dependent on your palate and what you taste. As long as you remember, the rule of thumb is if it's cold, you lose a lot of the subtler tasting notes. If it's warm, you gain them back. This concludes my bit on the general rules of thumb of wine selling. We've talked about setup. We've talked about ice and cold and temperature control. We've talked about the pitch and how it doesn't need to be complicated. We talked about the selling points and how you really focus first on the tasting notes because that's the most important part to the customer. And we talked about 5, sort of give the customer some onus and some questions to answer at the very end of your tasting. Now, next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about your behavior as a salesman and how you should go about thinking and doing what you're supposed to do. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about what other selling points can you bring to the table, what other ideas can you bring to the table to woo people over to your product. Thank you and have a great day.